us to come because you are
No,
in
that
wonderful
look here.
opportunities. You never was
Let me just
discriminated.
talk. Let me just talk. So, it was sort of an interesting factor. I didn't have any trouble, and according to Israeli laws, any Jew that comes to the shore of Israel, immigrants, it becomes a citizen right away. However, if he's not a Jew, then he doesn't become a citizen.
But you become one.
So I came there saying I'm a Jew, okay? And so I became a citizen. But basically, according to those laws, I was not, okay? So I lied without wanting, okay? So that's one thing. But the other thing is, I felt sort of hemmed in a small country, you couldn't really get out. You really had to have quite a bit of money in order to travel here, there, and so on. And I wanted to have a little more freedom. Then the other thing was that um, even though I was chief of neurosurgery, my salary wasn't really that big because that was the tradition in Israel.
Very small.
Physicians didn't have such very big salaries. And the time would come when I would have to support 100% my parents and have to educate my children. And I didn't have really even any money to buy a decent car. My last year there, I bought ancient Citroën that was not a very good car. But anyway, so I really wanted out. And then I was thinking, to go to South America, but then from this chest surgeon, I should concentrate in the United States. So
And where were your mom and dad then?
they came in 1951 to Israel.
Okay.
At that time, I was second-year resident in neurosurgery. Of course, the salary is very small. We had a room
You had one room for a whole year.
Yeah, let me talk. Let me talk, okay. We had one room in the housing on the campus provided by the hospital. And of course, Magda and Henry and I, okay, were there. And my parents came, and of course, they didn't have where to go, nor did they have any money to buy something or rent something. So then they stayed with us in that one room. And at night, we pulled out some bed. We had on, some
Foldable
bed
bed.
under bed. No, not folded, the word sort of that you sleep under. So then the whole width of the room was one bed,
Right.
So, okay. This went for quite a while.
For a year.
And then my teacher in neurosurgery talked to Golda Meir, who at that time was just an important member in the Federation of Labor in Israel that was part of the the government. Actually, that party was in charge in Israel for many years. Ben Gurion was the head of that party. And she was an important member, and he talked to her and he asked her to help me get an apartment or a house for my parents. Because at that time they started building in Israel small houses in certain developments in some rural communities for new immigrants, but they had to have a certain amount of money and this and that. And there were many more candidates than housing, So that's the reason you needed support. So Golda Meir, then at the request of my chief, arranged for my parents to get a little house in Kfar Saba that was, 10 miles away from where I was. And it was financed in such a way, you know, the minimal payments and all that. It's just that they don't give it to you for totally free.
Right.
But it's very, very. And I managed also to get my mother a job in the hospital in the department that prepares the instruments and the other things for surgery, like linen and gloves and so forth. And so my mother worked there, putting together gloves and whatever, you know. My father tried to get a job. Well, he was 56 when he arrived in Israel, so then this is now already going later. In Israel, the department that controls employment is looking for jobs for people up to age 55. Beyond that, they have no obligation to find anything. Well, with great difficulty, somehow my father found a job as an orderly in a psychiatric hospital. And he worked there for a while, but then it was dangerous because at that time there were no medications like now, you know, tranquilizer and so forth. There were violent patients, it beat you up or whatever. So then he stopped working there. So my mother was working, and I was 31 years old when I had to take care of my parents. And they managed, you know, to hang on and all that. So then, of course, when I became chief of neurosurgery in 1953, I had a bigger salary, although it wasn't great. The reason that physicians aren't paid very well in Israel is they are, it's socialized medicine, so, you know, there's no private practice like that, at least only for extremely few people. And so they have to be on salary and employed by hospitals or employed by clinics.
Still today?
What?
The same is today there?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, I don't know exactly. I think so. The thing is that I was employed by the hospital, okay? And now in the reason that the physicians weren't paid too well was there were too many physicians there. When Hitler came to power in 1933, a whole bunch of German physicians came to Israel. And this created an overabundance of physicians, you know, suddenly. And this overabundance didn't clear. Now, I came there in 1949, January. So in these 16 years, it didn't clear. There was still an overabundance of physicians. And a bus driver for the Israeli bus company, Egged, was paid more than the head of the neurosurgical department.
A bricklayer earned more.
Then the head of the neurosurgical department at the Tel Aviv Hospital, you know.
Wow.
Well, this was another things I didn't quite like, you know, because even though we sort of struggled along, in other words, we had enough, you know, money to eat, although not very greatly because the food was sort of expensive in those years.
Expensive. I made for one chicken breast, I don't know how many.
Schnitzels. But going to a restaurant was very expensive. Buying a suit or something was very expensive. But you know,
for everybody.
but see, we
Well, I
had,
didn't have an easy life.
yeah, we had an apartment owned by the hospital and didn't have to pay rent. You see, that was the reason that you could manage to eat and dress yourself.
Right.
But I wouldn't have managed to educate my children. Wouldn't have
Right.
managed to support
No.
my parents when they needed total support. But at that time, they needed just a little bit, and I did that.
Yeah.
So there were many reasons, but see, one of the reasons that galled me a great deal was the stupidity of government. One is just a human being, and then one calls you a Christian,
But you were never
according
persecuted.
to just yeah.
Don't
Let
even
me
know
talk.
what
No,
it is.
don't interrupt me. One calls you a Christian, then other calls you a Jew, and then when you come to the land of the Jews, you are not a Jew. Really not a Jew. So even though they left me alone, they really needed me. So as long as they need me, sure, they leave me on her own.
Right.
And they were upset that I left too.
That's terrible.
Well, I don't know. It wasn't really
There were
horrible,
more-
but the
more
point is, I
persecutions
wanted to
there.
have a better life for my
Right.
family,
Well,
for my children,
Right.
and
So in that
For my
sense,
parents,
it was
for
good that
everyone.
it happened in that sense, because
that
Yeah,
was the
it
main
forced you
point,
to move
the
to here.
main reason.
okay, it wasn't easy to get an American visa because the American at that time Israel was discouraging the immigration of people from Israel anywhere because they wanted everyone to be there. And the United States Embassy, therefore, didn't make it easy at all. And it was a quota according to the land from where you came. Now, if it's a land with big population, the yearly quota was a little bigger. It was a land with small population, the quota was smaller. She was born in Romania, the quota was smaller. I was born in Russia, so the quota was bigger, but I came from Romania. I used to be Romanian. So whatever, that was a little on the slow thing. I could have waited, I don't know how many years to get a visa. But then we met somebody who was facilitating the immigration, and he said that the United States had a provision for the immigration of qualified people, and a certain number of immigrants every year are approved by the immigration department, the ones that have skills that are of value in the United States. As I was a neurosurgeon, even though there are neurosurgeons in the United States, but this is still a skill. Actually, you need it only as a physician. And so they prepared some paper for us, and you had to have, however, a job before you come, and of course you have to have sponsors that guarantee that you're not going to be on welfare. So fortunately, Magda had a distant cousin who was,
First cousin of my mother.
yeah.
And he helped.
So he sponsored us, and he owned some chocolate factory or so. So
No, he owned the diamond.
yeah, at that time, well, yes, he used to have the chocolate, and he owned the
diamond.
diamond business, but he wasn't really a real rich man,
No,
but he sponsored us, okay. And this guy that prepared the papers and all that found a job as an intern on Staten Island Hospital. You know what Staten Island is? Okay, good. And they have a hospital, and obviously nobody wants to be an intern there. So there are always positions there. So I had that. So that was enough, of course, a base for getting the visa. And there was a very nice lady also in charge of the visa. She was from Minnesota, and her name was Manley, Manley. That was her last name. And so we get the visa, and in the last few days of October 1957, we decide to come. And I had $100. That's all the money I had. And wife, 2 children.
After 9 years in Yugoslavia,
And,
$100.
That's amazing.
And
You could see how much we could earn.
well, and so we flew with the Sabena airline, you know, and that flew first from Tel Aviv to Athens, from Athens to Brussels, and then we changed the plane, and came over the Atlantic, and then we landed in the morning, flew all night. It was 17 hours to fly from Brussels to New York at that time, 1957. And when we land, then
17 hours?
17 hours, yeah.
Wow.
And then when we land the airport there, Kennedy Airport, that cousin of, the distant cousin of Magda's was waiting for us. And a colleague of mine, a psychiatrist, who was in the same hospital where I was chief of neurosurgery, we were friends. He was from Hungary. And he, a Jew, you know, but from Hungary. And he waited there also. Good. And so these 2 people waited for us. And my colleague said he was in this second-rate hospital called a state hospital in New York called Lethbridge Village. That was, I don't know, about 60 miles north of New York City. And that they needed living bodies, you know, physicians desperate for physicians. No American physician want to work there, you know. So they needed, you know, they catch, you know, immigrants come there. And so I had a job. You know, he said, you come there, you have a job. Pays $400 a month. And with $400 a month at that time, you could support the family. Mm-hmm. So I had $100, now I'm going to have $400, okay. So that's it. Then our cousin took us to the supermarket. You know, for the first time we have seen an American
we couldn't believe our eyes. You see, but, I mean, they didn't have no supermarkets in Israel. And at one time you had to have wait in line for everything. For a
now
piece
you
of
see all those masses of food, of fruits, all that. That's just unbelievable.
And he
And then he
said,
bought
I pay for it.
some
He put
military.
$100. And then he was just shopping, and I said, Jean, please stop me, because this is going to be a fortune. You know, how much you would pay in this, that, or something like that. And he said, just relax. And I was amazed how much you can buy with the price. In Israel, if you bought all that, you have 2
Didn't
months
spend
of your
$100
salary.
either, spent maybe
You spent on
$30 or what.
food.
Well, anyway, so that was it. And then our friend, my friend Sekai, took us to the direction of the hospital. We needed lodging, and he already has researched it, and that was the hospital was in Rockland County, and that has some mountains there close by, resorts. And this was a resort motel that had a number of cabins. And they had 2 cabins that were winterized. In one, there was an Italian-American family that lived
Very
there.
small, very
What?
small cabin. And the
And the other one
the
is
door,
the one that
you
we
never knew
rented.
when it's locked or open. And then,
What?
remember that was a small cabin, and the door you never know if it's locked or open, because the bolts were not working right and anything.
Well, anyway, there
But
was
the-
no
but the
chance of
people were-
anyone breaking in because who the hell is going to go and
It
try
was-
to rob those poor people that have
Right.
nothing anyway?
And
So,
it was in a forest,
yeah.
beautiful
So
forest.
that was our place that we got our lodging.
And I was very impressed because the owners knew that we were immigrants, and we didn't have much. And they came in
Much, nothing.
and we didn't have nothing. And they came in every few moments. Do you need something? Should we bring you a blanket? That was good because we didn't
Yeah,
have
but
blanket.
our cousin bought military
Yeah,
blankets
we
for
bought
us.
military blankets.
And
And I still have them.
We
in
still
our-
have them.
in
They're
our
that
place.
good. American
100%
military blankets.
wool.
Yeah.
Just the quality of American
And they brought us dishes.
industry.
And-
Okay, so then next day I go with my friend to the hospital, and the hospital had about 3,000 beds, so 3,000 inmates. These were psychiatric patients and neurologically handicapped patients that had, let's see, this infantile paralysis, and things like hydrocephalus, things like that. But most of them were psychiatric patients and were chronic patients that didn't have much of a chance to get out from there. And there was not much medication at that time that was really any good. And what they needed is they needed physicians to see the patients every day. Well, the new patients, of course, you have to examine, take a history, and decide on the psychiatric treatment. But these chronic patients, you really had to see them because they also get colds, they get sick, and so forth. And you had to take care of them. And there was a central building with a hospital that had place for internal medicine patients. So these psychiatric patients, they had pneumonia, they were there, and they had also a number of surgical beds, and would a surgeon from outside come and do appendectomies or what. And so they needed physicians to see 3,000 patients, had to be seen every day. And they didn't have many physicians. It was the head of the hospital, the administrator, was American. His name was Wolfson, and he lived there on the campus. And outside of that, there were 6 other physicians. One was a Ukrainian, and I don't know, I don't remember the others. The Ukrainian, I knew him a little better. And of course, there was Sekai, my friend, and then was I, okay? And so this is what we did every day. We had certain buildings, pavilions, I don't know how many hundreds patients. I think we had 2 or 3 of those, and the others had also whatever it was. And so every day in the morning we go, we talk to the head nurse to find out who is sick and whatever. And